Live TV doesn't just glitch like that. The lights cut out, the screens flickered, and chaos exploded backstage. I thought it was just a technical failure, until I felt cold metal against my head and heard, "You shouldn't have come up here." And then the monitors showed a recording no one was ever supposed to see. But let's start from the beginning. New York City. If there's one thing this town loves, it's a good show. And tonight, the main event was happening inside ABC Studios, on the set of The View. The air reeked of freshly brewed coffee, overinflated egos, and just the right amount of fake sincerity, like someone had sprayed authenticity out of a can but forgot to shake it first. The audience was a perfect cocktail of political diehards and casual spectators, the kind of people who watch daytime television just to feel like they had an opinion. Some came for the blood sport, others just wanted to see who would self-destruct first. And in the middle of it all, Karoline Leavitt, 32, conservative firebrand, political strategist, and the woman the mainstream media loved to hate, took her seat at the panel table. Across from her sat the usual suspects, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, looking like a trio of gladiators who'd just spotted fresh meat in the arena. This wasn't her first time at this table. Last time she was here, the producers got exactly what they wanted, a full-blown screaming match that sent social media into meltdown mode for a full 48 hours. They wanted a repeat performance. The problem? Karoline wasn't here to play by their script. The red light on the camera flashed. They were live. "Karoline," Whoopi started, her voice dripping with that signature "I'm not mad, just disappointed" tone that made her feel like a substitute teacher that had lost control of the classroom. "The last time you were here, you accused us of suppressing conservative voices. Do you really believe that? In 2025? When you're sitting right here on national television, saying whatever you want?" "Oh, here we go." Karoline smiled. They were setting the trap. Classic. But this wasn't her first rodeo. "With all due respect, Whoopi," she said, tilting her head slightly, "this show is the gold standard of selective outrage. You don't invite conservatives here for a conversation. You invite them to be your personal punching bags. The second someone challenges your worldview, you roll your eyes and—" She clapped her hands together mockingly. "Cut to commercial break." The audience gasped. Someone in the back coughed nervously. Joy Behar, 81 years old but still fighting like it's 1968, wasn't about to let that one slide. She leaned in, eyes blazing. "You call it selective outrage," she shot back. "I call it calling out fascists. You're out here defending politicians who—" "Oh, save me, the democracy is in danger" speech. Karoline cut her off, waving a hand dismissively. "If anyone's threatening democracy, it's the people censoring news stories, deplatforming dissenters, and using the government like their personal cleanup crew." That did it. Sunny Hostin scoffed so loudly, the mic picked it up. "This is dangerous rhetoric," she snapped. "People like you push conspiracies that—" Karoline slammed her hand on the table. "The only conspiracy here," she said, voice cutting through the noise, "is the one where a bunch of media elites decide what's true based on how it benefits them. And guess what? The American people aren't buying it anymore." The set went silent. The audience, unsure whether to clap or boo, just sat there, eyes darting back and forth like they'd stumbled into the wrong argument at Thanksgiving dinner. Behind the camera, the show's executive producer was frantically signaling, "Wrap it up, now." But Karoline wasn't done. She turned, locking eyes with the camera. "And that's why I'm calling for a full congressional hearing on media bias and election interference. People deserve to know just how deep this corruption runs." Whoopi's face twitched. Joy looked like she just swallowed a lemon whole. Sunny was already flipping through her notes, searching for anything, literally anything, to fire back with. And then, just as Whoopi opened her mouth to regain control of the show, blackout. Suddenly, the studio lights cut out. The monitors shut down. The entire set was plunged into darkness. A loud bang echoed from behind the cameras. Screams. Someone knocked over a chair. A producer shouted something, but it was drowned out by the pure, unfiltered panic spreading through the studio. And then, static. The screen behind them flickered for a brief second, before The View went completely off the air. The red emergency lights flickered, casting long, jagged shadows across the studio. The eerie glow made everything feel like a scene from some low-budget dystopian movie. Except this wasn't a movie. This was real chaos. Producers were scrambling like headless chickens, yelling into their headsets, trying to figure out what had just happened. The security team was barking orders, gripping their earpieces like they were waiting for instructions from the Pentagon. The audience? Frozen. Some people clutched their phones, frantically refreshing their feeds, while others sat stiff as statues, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell them what to do. And then there was Karoline. She stood dead center in the mess, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't just a glitch. This wasn't some innocent technical malfunction. She'd been in the political game long enough to know one thing. When people in power panic, it's because they just lost control of the narrative. Her gaze flicked to Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny. Whoopi's usual confidence was gone. She gripped her mic like a lifeline, tapping it repeatedly. Dead. No signal. No sound. Joy Behar, normally the queen of sarcasm, stood stiff as a board, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me that wasn't an attack. Nobody answered. Karoline scanned the room. The crew looked spooked, the kind of fear that doesn't come from an electrical failure. Someone knew something. Where's the control room? She demanded. A few heads snapped toward her, like she'd said something she wasn't supposed to. A guy from the camera crew, Ray maybe, swallowed hard. Upstairs, but that was all she needed to hear. She was already moving. Karoline took the stairs 2 at a time, her boots clanking against the metal steps. The whole building felt off, too quiet, too staged, like someone had hit pause on reality. She reached the control room door and shoved it open. And froze. The monitors were all blank. Except for one. A single red warning screen blinked, the white text flashing like a silent siren. Warning, unauthorized transmission intercepted, signal breached. Her stomach tightened. What transmission? Who breached the signal? And why did it feel like someone was watching her? She took a slow step forward, her eyes scanning the room. The air was stale, like the oxygen had been sucked out of it. Then, a muffled thud. She whipped around. One of the studio technicians lay sprawled on the floor, unconscious. Maybe worse. And before she could even process what was happening, ta-ta. Something cold and metallic pressed against the back of her head. A voice, low and calculated, whispered into her ear, "You shouldn't have come up here." Karoline's pulse spiked. She could feel the weight of the weapon against her skull, the smooth, steady pressure of someone who had done this before. Whoever this was, they weren't nervous. They weren't panicking. They were in control. She exhaled slowly. Think. Think. Funny, she said, keeping her voice level. I was just about to say the same thing to you. No response. She glanced down, just enough to see the reflection of her captor in one of the darkened monitors. Tall, black tactical gear, no network badge, definitely not studio security. This wasn't just about the view. This was bigger. She needed an opening, a distraction, anything. And then she saw it. The technician on the ground was still breathing. His fingers twitched just barely. He was conscious. Good. Karoline acted fast. She dropped her weight and swung her elbow back, hard. Her attacker grunted, the sudden impact making him shift just enough. Just enough. She lunged forward, grabbing the first thing within reach, a camera tripod, and swung. Crack. The masked man stumbled. Not down, but off balance. That was all she needed. She bolted for the door. She barely made it into the hallway before... Lockdown engaged. The intercom crackled to life, and with a loud clank, the emergency doors slammed shut. She was trapped. And then, from somewhere deep in the building, a different kind of alarm started blaring. Not a fire alarm, not a security alert. Something worse, something deliberate, a warning. Whatever was happening here. It wasn't just about cutting the cameras. It was about making sure no one got out. Karoline froze. The cold metal against her skull sent a sharp chill down her spine. She could hear the slow, steady breathing of the masked man behind her. No panic, no hesitation. This guy was a pro. Move, he ordered. His voice was calm, controlled. The kind of tone people used when they already knew how things were going to end. Except Karoline wasn't about to let him call the shots. She exhaled slowly. Timing was everything. In one swift motion, she twisted her body, throwing her elbow straight into his ribs. Thud. He let out a muffled grunt, stumbling back just half a step. That was all she needed. Her hands shot out, asterisk, asterisk, grabbing the nearest object, a monitor, and she swung. Crash. The screen exploded on impact, glass and plastic shattering across the floor. The masked man hit the ground hard, the force of the blow sending him sprawling. Karoline didn't waste time. She dropped to her knees beside the unconscious technician. He was breathing. Good. But he wasn't waking up anytime soon. Her eyes locked onto the earpiece still in his ear. She yanked it out and turned it on. Static. Then, "Control breached. Repeat, control breached. Get her out, now." Her blood ran cold. Who was her? Before she could process what she just heard, a distant alarm started blaring. She bolted. Karoline sprinted out of the control room, her boots pounding against the floor. Every instinct in her body screamed, "Run!" She hit the stairwell at full speed, gripping the railing as she hurtled down step after step. Almost there. The main exit was just ahead. Bam! A wall of security guards cut her off. "Seriously?" she growled. "You guys got nothing better to do?" They didn't answer. They just moved in. Tackle. The impact slammed her against the ground, knocking the air from her lungs. She thrashed, kicking, twisting, fighting, but they had her pinned. "Let me go," she roared. "You're covering something up." The guards didn't react, but someone else did. A gruff voice cut through the chaos. "Enough!" The security team froze. Karoline lifted her head just in time to see a grizzled man in a black suit step forward. The guy screamed intelligence agency, short cropped hair, stone-cold stare, that classic CIA-style earpiece. The kind of guy who didn't blink unless he absolutely had to. He crouched beside her, voice low. "You don't understand," he said. "This is bigger than you, bigger than Congress. Walk away, now." Karoline locked eyes with him. Not a chance. Then, the studio monitors flickered back on. Every screen in the room lit up. A grainy, black and white surveillance feed played. The entire room went still. Karoline's breath hitched. A hidden room, a long, dimly lit conference table. A group of powerful media executives sat around it, their faces cold, unreadable. They were talking, then laughing, and then a familiar politician stepped into the frame. President Harris. The feed cut to black. A thick, heavy silence filled the room. Karoline could feel the shift. This wasn't just about media bias anymore. This was something bigger, something she wasn't supposed to see. The head of security stared at the screen, his jaw tight. Then he turned to Karoline. "You need to leave," he said. "Now." Karoline stood her ground. She wasn't leaving, not until she knew exactly what she had just uncovered. What would you do in Karoline's place? Would you walk away like they demanded, or keep digging for the truth no matter the risk? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you or someone you know has experienced something similar, tell your story. Don't forget to leave a like if you found this interesting, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Your opinion matters. This story was created not to divide, but to shed light on an issue and make the world a better place. The truth matters, and the more people who see it, the stronger we become.